I think where we got lost is we just bought into the world system and we really thought that it was some sort of reflection of God's system. It's just not. It's just not. I mean, you can really try to make the world system God's system, but you're really stretching. When you hear God's system and it makes no sense to you, it means you have really bought into the world's way of being a blessing to people, other people. Um, and you have really bought into the idea that everything you have is yours. I've heard people say it. But then they'll go stand in a temple and proclaim all things are yours, God. Well, make up your mind. Is it yours, which is what you proclaim in private, or is it God's, which you proclaim in public? Some schizophrenic stuff going on there. Now they sound harsh, but I really get tired of the hypocrisy. I really do. I can imagine how God thinks about it. How God thinks about it. So that might be too up in the air for you. I can imagine how the people you are called to influence it, or you are called to influence, thinks about it. I can imagine how you sound to those people you're trying to impress. I can imagine how it feels when you're wondering what you're doing wrong. And you won't take responsibility of the truth that is you have put your priorities over God's priorities because what he is giving you belongs to you. You make the decision of how you're going to use God's provision. You make that decision. In your head, that makes sense because you bought into the world system. I'm not saying you tried to, it's just the way it is. It comes out in how you treat people. It's like some people will say something that's really disrespectful to me, which doesn't bother me, but it does hinder my growth. And all I could do is laugh about it and ask God for assistance. I am determined to live by these principles. But I turn into a vessel. I'm not asking you to even understand that part yet, but we're getting there. There's a story of a prophet in the Bible where he would, run from this particular queen because the king was a little whipped, so to speak, and this queen didn't like this prophet, so the prophet had to run away because the queen was trying to kill him. She ended up falling out of a window or something eventually, and she died, and God told him to get up. But in the meantime, God had fed him in many different ways. in strange ways. When Moses walked away from all of his possessions to go lead, I think at the beginning, 3 million people. And they were having babies along the way too, so maybe it stayed 3 million. Maybe it went to more. I don't know. I don't see in there where it confirms the exact number of the people. It was a lot of people. But here's this man that walked away from absolutely everything, so became poor, and then goes into the princes of Israel and tells them to take all the gold out of Egypt, follow him, this poor guy who walked away from everything. Walked away from everything. Then I think about Saul of Tarsus, who walked away from everything, became poor. It's the principle. You know, and then you sit with your little rich self and you judge people who walk away from everything to help you. You might have something twisted. You're thinking like the world. Now, you know, God has just taken me this direction, so I'm not going to spend you know, I have to be obedient, so I'm going to say these things, but I've kind of was going over my notes, but God has kind of taken me in this direction. The purpose of the congregation, the princes, the Levites, the Levitical priests, and Moses, who is the representative of the hand of God, the purpose of them, the purpose, was to release them out of bondage so that they can go and serve God. How do they serve God? By living according to the kingdom of God, to usher in the kingdom of heaven. Period. Now, that sounds like a big deal for you, but it is a simple matter for God. Our part. Be obedient to walk according to the system. Do not take ownership of his stuff. The earth is the Lord's. I gotta go New Testament on you. I think it's New Testament. I gotta look it up. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. Psalm 24. Sorry, it's not New Testament. It's Old Testament. It's Old Testament. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, the world and they that dwell therein. You cannot operate in the seventh day of rest clinging on to everything you got. It's mine, 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 mine. I remember some years ago walking away from the automobile industry because I wanted to work full-time ministry. So I walked into a couple of ministries and said, "Hey, I'm here. I want to work." Just crazy stuff. I don't want to work in the car business anymore. I want to work in ministry. I want to help people. Just overly zealous. And I remember some of the looks I got from the ministers to look at me and feel sorry for me. It wasn't one. It wasn't two. It was a lot more. It's not that I can't work a job. It's just that I wanted my ministry to be the ministry. In this case, it would be the Levitical ministry. I wanted to be one of the 22,000. They didn't understand that. I didn't understand how to explain it. But, since now I do, that's been years because, I studied this stuff. I know who I am. I want to walk in it. And they looked at me, oh, you poor guy. You have no money. No money, no worth. I'm not going to say that. But you guys know what I was going to say after that. No money, no worth. Even in the Christian church. This is not the kingdom of heaven. I remember recently talking to a business person, and this business person, no matter what you did, he did it too. He could do everything you can do. Does not see the value of collaboration, he sees the value of dictation. He does not see the value of uplifting others unless he can be uplifted with them. It's not how the Jubilee works. It's not how the seventh day of rest works. It's not how the seventh year works. Seventh day. Seventh year or 50th year. Well, beginning of the 50th year. 49th year, you know what I mean. 50th year. That's Jubilee. People proclaim these systems but do not live in them. Let me read it so you can see. I'm only going to read Deuteronomy 15, verses 1 through 4. However, you can go back into Leviticus chapter 25, and there are other areas as well that explain it in more detail, which you got to go back into the videos because we already talked about them. If you're really interested. By the way, this is for my kids, my grandkids, my brothers and sisters in Kenya, my brothers and sisters in Ghana, my brother in Bangladesh, and whomever else benefits from this. God bless you. We're on a journey from Genesis to Revelation. This is my personal Bible study, so study to show yourself approved. If you're really interested in learning how the kingdom of God operates, because it operates today as it did then, because they are the natural laws. Along the way, I'm going to be throwing some terminology at you. I don't want you to just trust me. I want you to look it up. Education has been taken out of our schools, and worse, out of our meeting places. What you may call church or a temple. We do not discuss these things. And part of the reason why is because our leaders are not familiar with these things. Some of them, not all. Some of them are just flat not interested in these kingdom of God principles, which is how the world dominates those of the kingdom. The Bible even talks about it. They're wiser than us as far as operating the principles. It does not qualify them for the place. The principles work for all those who are interested in instituting the principles for the purpose of establishing heaven. But that takes the right heart condition. If your heart condition is just to get as much stuff as you want and feel as superior as you want to feel, that will not usher in the kingdom of heaven. It will just usher in riches for you. But if you're interested in ushering in the kingdom of heaven, Moses is the greatest example, in my opinion, other than Jesus, that actually did it. The only reason why I'm doing this, well, not the only, one of the main reasons why I'm doing this study is because we study Jesus, we like what he did, but you don't understand what he did. It was all based upon what happened in the Torah. Forgiveness, Torah. Grace, Torah. Healing, Torah. And we've been reading it all. We've been reading it all. We've been reading it all. What happens to your enemies? They fall into pits. They're not trying to. They just don't get it. Your enemies come out of your own camps. You've been reading it. If you've been following these videos, if you've been studying to show yourself approved, you have seen it. So my conversation from this point, especially after I get out of the Torah, may seem a little rough to you if you have not been paying attention. But it's all right here. Deuteronomy 15, verse 1. At the end of 7 years, thou shalt make a release. This is a commandment. Now, I'm not saying it's a 10 commandment. I'm just saying at the end of 7 years, thou shalt make a release. He didn't say maybe. No, shalt. This is the way the kingdom of God operates. This is how major corporations operate towards themselves. This is how tax policy is set up. The world system operates based upon these principles. Towards corporations, not individuals. If you think about your loans, if you don't pay your loans in 7 years, technically, it used to be they would fall off your credit report. Now it's 10 years for bankruptcy, which is not the kingdom policy. It used to be 7. These principles are used more cunningly. Now, why would somebody do that? Because it builds capacity. Now, I'm getting off into business principles now. Because the 7 years that you write off are now tax deductible as losses. For those who have high enough income to take advantage, which are corporations, to take advantage of these policies. If you don't operate according to these policies, you will have more poor around you. If you have more poor around you, that is not good for you, especially when you're supposed to be circulating resources, kingdom principles. Study to show yourself approved. I can't keep talking about the milk anymore. Not coming out of the Torah. You gotta pay attention. We want success. We have to live according to the principles of success. And you can't do it by yourself. If you think you're bigger and greater than everyone, tell me if you're bigger than and greater than Moses, than David, all became poor so that someone else can become rich. Because their heart intention was for the souls, not to fill their pockets so that they can brag about what they got and tell people, let me show you how to get what I got, without putting in the investment into them to get it. Preaching does little. I didn't say nothing, but little in saving people. What saves people is not the teachers, it's the ones that walk with you. Deuteronomy 15. I hope you're still with me. At the end of 7 years, thou shalt make a release. It's not your release. It's the way the system operates. It's hard to release something that you consider yours. Verse 2. Only reading up to 4. Verse 2. And this the manner of the release. Let me explain it to you. Now, it doesn't say you should, maybe, kind of, sort of. It says you shall. You, not somebody else, you want reparations, but you don't want to give them. And this the manner of the release. You ready? Every creditor that lends unto his neighbor shall release. That's it. No debt. 7 years. No debt. You got 7 years to pay me. No debt afterwards. 7 years. No debt. You don't have to lend again, because we're the lenders, not the borrowers. I'll read part of that, where that came from here in a minute. We're the lenders, not the borrowers, if we get that far, because that's beyond 4. We're the lenders, not the borrowers. So perspective has got to be there. I lend my time to people. I lend my talent to people. I have no treasure to lend. But when I did have treasure, I didn't even think about getting it back. And to be quite frank with you, the way people have treated me, who have lent to me, they haven't held their debt against me either. But what they have held against me is their opinion of me. This is how it works. Every creditor that lends unto his neighbor shall release. It's called the Lord's release. Towards the end of that verse. Verse 3. Of a foreigner thou may exact, but which is thine with thy brother thine hand shall release. So with someone outside of the kingdom, you can exact, charge interest as well. But for your brother inside the kingdom or sister, release it. Don't release it with an attitude. Release it with, my sister, my brother, you're released. Not for the purpose of saying, I did this for you. No, it's the Lord's release. Verse 2. It's the Lord's release. It ain't your stuff. It ain't your stuff. When I walked away from the car business making nothing major, but it was a healthy 6-figure income so that I can do ministry, I didn't feel like I had a choice because of my health condition. I feel much better now. Thank you very much for asking. To do this, I do this for free. Moses did it for free. For the purpose of bringing people into a healthier place. I hope you hear me. If you don't see it this way, study to show yourself approved. But to get these words from God and then to explain to the congregation, the children of Israel, which are the princes, prince, child, not kings, not gods. Which is consistent with what's in the New Testament too. You're under tutelage or tutors until. yeah. So understanding how this works brings wealth to your system. It may not feel like it because you feel like you're losing because you think the stuff is yours. Because you're focused on getting your stuff, not focused on saving souls. Verse 4. Save when there shall be no poor among you, for the Lord shall greatly bless thee in the land which the Lord thy God gives thee inheritance to possess it. Did you get it? Did you see how it worked? Did you catch it? Save when, so here's the conclusion. Save when, that's a conclusion. Save when there shall be no poor among you. Save when there shall be, save when, so can we call that a promise? Save when there should be no poor among you. Save when there shall be no poor among you. This is the system. From 1 to 4, save when there shall be no poor among you. For the Lord shall greatly bless thee. Here's the promise. For the Lord shall, so if you do 1, do 3, save when there shall be no poor among you. For the Lord shall greatly bless thee where? In the land. In the promise. In the place that he's promised to take you to. You're going to be good, but it ain't about you. It's about the promise he made to your fathers who were his friends. And if you do well, living by the same principles your father lived by, your children will benefit. Because it's a promise to your children because of what you did. That part I said I will read to you is in verse 6. It says, "For the Lord thy God bless thee as he promised thee." He's all the way in the future. He blessed thee, because they're not in Canaan yet. He blessed thee as he promised thee, and thou shalt lend unto many nations, but thou shalt not borrow. He's not talking to an individual. And I love churches who love to make this about individualism. This is not individualism. This is to a nation. This is speech for nations. This is not speeches for your individual little goals to get somewhere by yourself, by taking advantage of other people and their skill sets and allowing them to be poor so that you can accomplish your goal. Because it's all about you. No, this is about the kingdom of heaven, operating the kingdom of God, walking with multiple tribes. Oh, this video has gone too long. Sorry, having too much fun. Who are operating together. CashApp $MrPaulDozier. CashApp $MrPaulDozier. We're on a journey from Genesis to Revelation. I don't know how long it's going to take, but thank you for taking the journey with me. Thank you for taking a journey with us.